Hello, everybody. I'm Susan Flanagan, and I'm a journalist and author in St. John's, Newfoundland. My first novel, Supermarket Baby, published by Flanker Press, won the people out of their COVID isolation and drop them into the adventurous life of Barley Lick. People outdoors enjoying nature. It's great fun until it turns sinister. Dun, da, da, da. In the Degrees of Barley Lick, a kidnapper uses geocaches to hide clues to find a missing boy. Barley Lick, the main character, gets dragged into the game. Barley is 16 years old and he's having a rough time. He split with his girlfriend, and then his father died. Now his mother has a new boyfriend, a police officer named Fred. First of all, helping would mean losing a huge geocaching competition. And even worse, it would mean letting his ex-girlfriend Phyllis win. But when Barley realizes that a young boy's life may be in danger and time to rescue him is running out, he steps up. And it is this story that you will read in the Degrees of Barley Lick. There will be a Q&A session with prizes at the end of the live stream. Feel free to type any questions in the chat during the reading. And one lucky reader will win a copy of the Degrees of Barley Lick. I'll custom sign it and I can send it to any address in Canada. And another will win some Newfoundland Republic leg warmers, and they are knitted by Yarn Cove Knitting, and they'll keep you warm as you go geocaching this fall. So we filmed this video in Pippi Park in what I call the Hooterville tree. So first you'll see me geocaching so you can get an idea of what finding a cache looks like. Geocaching began in May 2000 when the United States government lifted a system that scrambled satellite signals. That means I can hide a container in the woods, post the coordinates on geocaching.com. Anyone else in the world can log in, plug the coordinates into a handheld GPS like this one, and then they can use their own handheld GPS to lead them to the cache. Once they're within a certain number of meters, they're on their own and they have to find clues to find the hidden bucket or ammo box or whatever it is. The containers are usually full of worthless trinkets, but they're really fun. And in the degree the travel bug that Barley first finds once things that changed the game completely. So I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to offer any more spoilers. And one last thing, I want you to know that the day that we filmed the reading, the black flies were savage, and you're not going to see them on the video, but they were crawling all over my face, under my glasses. They were biting me. They were biting my thighs. I was trying not to react and scratch them off. But at one point I say Barley instead of Stanley, and I blame it all on the flies. So here we go. Welcome to the first online reading of the Degrees of Barley Lick. The Degrees of Barley Lick, Chapter 17, Phyllis Drops By. It was 8:39 by the time Newton's silver Mercedes pulled in front of the stucco house on 62A Avenue, and Barley hopped out. He was pissed off that Newton had made him miss the Stanley Cup final. What an asshole. Not only that, but he was hungry and tired. Hangry, his mother called it. All he wanted to do was get inside, away from Newton, grab something to eat, and vegetate. He had to think things through. What was he doing out there today? A lock of hair and a hat? Whose were they? And why were the police helicoptering all over creation looking for them? As the Mercedes pulled away from the curb, Barley noticed there was someone on the porch. It couldn't be his mother. When Newton called her to say they were on the way, she confirmed she wouldn't be home for at least another hour. Plus, it wasn't her shape, but it was definitely female. The person stood up, but her face was partially obscured by one of his mother's hanging plants. He wondered who could be lurking on the porch at almost 9 p.m. It was the legs that gave her away, shapely and tanned. Shoot, he didn't have to look at the long brown hair with the blonde streaks to recognize her. Phyllis Henderson. What was she doing here? Come to rub his nose in the fact that he had screwed up Geofine and that she would win? Barley gulped. This was the first time she'd been at his house in 8 months. The first time since Halloween weekend. Phyllis was wearing khaki shorts and a plain black top covered by a Reebok jacket. Barley realized he'd never seen her wear pants. He wondered how he could still find her attractive after what she did to him. "Hi, Barley, what's up?" Barley felt a light sweat building under his arms. Nothing much. Thoughts of hair and baseball caps flitted through his mind. "I didn't know you had a dog. I saw him in the car when I passed you in Hope." Yes, a dog to replace my dead father, Barley thought. He had forgotten all about the fact his mother had brought home a Great Dane. That seemed like a lifetime ago. A loud woof sounded from above, followed by the unmistakable four-footed thump, 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 thump as Stanley whipped down the stairs. Poor dog. How long had he been locked indoors? He must be about to burst. "Barley, I think he's got to pee." Phyllis indicated Barley's big mug in the living room window. Stanley's massive head disappeared and reappeared in the window of the front door. He whined and rubbed his nose against the glass. He didn't look like he could last much longer. Phyllis crouched down and began calmly cooing to him through the beveled glass. "Hurry, he's in a frenzy." Stanley responded with another guttural woof. "He's all right." Barley knew full well he wasn't, but he was afraid Phyllis might invite herself in. "He is not all right, Barley Lick. Let the poor animal out or I'll report you to the Humane Society." Barley looked from the dog who had magically appeared in his life to Phyllis who had disappeared out of it and debated what to do. Reluctantly, he made a move towards the doorknob. Stanley was beside himself with anticipation. "I will die if you don't let me out soon," he whined. Barley opened the door and Stanley barreled through like a hurricane. The sheer momentum of 200+ pounds of beige fur knocked Phyllis off balance. Stanley beat his way to a rhododendron and relieved himself. "Holy hanky," she said, getting up and brushing herself off. "What's his name?" Before the word Stanley was out of Barley's mouth, Phyllis had proceeded up the steps and into the house, and by the time he caught up with her, she was hanging her jacket on the back of a chair. Stanley seemed disappointed to be going back in so soon. He looked at Barley, lifted a rear leg a second time, this time over the wooden grizzly carving's feet. Phyllis was talking. "Earth to Barley. I asked you what his name was." Barley blinked. "Oh, he's Stanley. You've changed things," she said, moving past Stanley, whose rudder-like tail sent the black floor lamp dancing. Barley steadied the lamp with one hand and removed a pair of gray socks hanging off the rim with the other, praying Phyllis hadn't noticed. He felt a flush in his cheeks. "It looks good. A lot bigger than the last time I was here," she said, as if her last visit had been a pleasant evening. She was right about the space, though. When Barley's mother renovated, she hadn't stopped at the floors. She had the guys take out a few walls and open up the kitchen and living areas. Barley thought the whole ceiling was going to come toppling down, but they must have known what they were doing, because that hadn't happened yet. For a month that winter, their house was a construction zone. With so much chaos at home, Barley was happy to go to school. The change was amazing, though. It hardly looked like the same house. The new living room kitchen was off-white with dark wood accents and a marble island. Phyllis stopped in front of Barley's computer. A framed topo map of the lower mainland hung on the wall behind the screen. She examined it before sitting down. He was happy to note he was a few inches taller than her now. He hadn't realized how much he'd grown since last year. She picked up a can of Spam from next to the monitor and began to read the ingredients. Before Barley could protest, she had pulled the tab, removed the little key, and started twisting off the lid. Liquid fat began oozing out. "Got a spoon?" she said. "You can't eat that." Barley looked at her suntanned face. It was always a creamy color and had tanned to a deep brown in only a couple of days. Her teeth looked amazing without braces, and he wondered what she would do if he kissed her right now. "Get that thought out of your mind, Barley. Always remember that Phyllis Henderson is a she-devil." "Why not?" she asked, moving to choose a small spoon from a jam jar standing on the counter next to the toaster. "Because." "Because why?" It was always like this with Phyllis. He was so intimidated in her presence that his mind didn't work properly. I don't know. He did know. His father had given him the Spam as a joke about a month before he died. "Well, I'm starved. Tell you what, I'll pay you for it." She stepped around Stanley, who had followed her to the computer, and moved to the kitchen. She dumped a pocketful of change on the counter and, moving one coin at a time with her finger, counted out $3.50. That should be enough to get another tin. She put the rest of the coins back in her pocket, moved to the sink, and poured the fatty liquid down the drain before installing herself on a stool at the island. Barley was incensed. He straightened his back and tried to calm his mind. He had forgotten his own hunger. All he wanted was to be alone and eat whatever leftovers he could find. What could he do to get Phyllis out of his house? Stanley sat at attention in front of Phyllis while she wolfed down the meat, desperate to get at whatever yummy pork byproducts were in that tin. He began intermittently flinging up a front paw. "Can I give him some?" she said, about to feed Stanley from her spoon. "No," Barley almost shouted. "That stuff would make him sick. He's got a very sensitive digestive system." Barley knew nothing about Stanley's digestive system. What he did know was that he didn't want Stanley eating his father's Spam. Barley couldn't explain why. It hurt his head to think about it. Determined not to show Phyllis how upset he was, Barley went to the propane fireplace and flipped the switch. The artificial logs crackled to life. He patted the huge doggy bed his mother had bought, but Stanley wouldn't budge from Phyllis's side. A glob of gelatin had fallen on the floor, and the huge canine licked it up with his eager tongue. Phyllis began rubbing her bare feet back and forth on Stanley's back as she polished off the rest, and Stanley tipped over sideways to optimize the foot massage. Barley's breath was coming in short spurts. He had to sit down. He made his way across the room to the couch. "Phyllis, what are you doing here?" Phyllis followed, speaking between mouthfuls. "After I saw you in Hope, you didn't show up at Colossus to get the next clue. How do you know?" She paused. "I asked Mr. C when I checked at the end of the day. He said he had no idea where you were. No one else knew what had happened either, so I called your mother and she said you were geocaching." "And?" "Well, how could you be geocaching if you didn't check in at Colossus for your second clue? What's it to you?" "I was worried." "Worried? You weren't worried. You were just checking up on me." "I admit I keep tabs on you, just like you keep tabs on me." "I don't keep tabs on you." Of course it was a lie. He always kept tabs on her. Stanley looked at him as if to say, "Fess up." There was no way Barley would admit any interest in Phyllis Henderson. "Is that all you came here to say, Syphilis?" Slowly, she laid the Spam tin on the coffee table and stood up to face him. "I told you never to call me that." "Well, Syphilis, I didn't listen." The fist that hit Barley's nose was as hard as a boxer's. Barley couldn't believe it belonged to a girl. It sent him sprawling. Blood poured out as if from a hose all over his shirt and pants. Tears sprang to his eyes, making it difficult to focus. Stanley woofed 3 times in a row and stood protectively over him. "You broke my nose." Barley gagged on the blood running down the back of his throat. He ran to the stove and grabbed a hand towel off the front. He sat on the stool Phyllis had vacated and put his head back and pinched to stop the flow. "I'll break more than that if you ever disrespect me again. Now tell me why you didn't go back to Colossus." "I was busy at Thun Peaks." The words came out nasal, S's becoming TH's. "Busy in Thun Peaks." "Sun Peaks? Where the hell is that?" she asked. "Not very ladylike language, Phyllis," he said through the towel. "Sorry, Barley. I forgot I was in the presence of a gentleman. Where is Sun Peaks?" "Near Kamloops." Blood pooled in his throat. He wanted to vomit. "Is there a new cache there?" "No, I mean yes, but it's not part of GeoFind." "Did you find it on geocaching.com?" "No." "So why were you looking for it?" "I was helping a cop." "A cop?" "Yeah, a cop. His name is Fred Newton." Barley couldn't bear to tell her that the horrible gum-chewing, cigarello-chomping man was dating his mother. He took down the towel to check the blood. It was still running out like thick red wine. He replaced the towel quickly. Stanley had his nose in the empty tin of Spam. Barley jumped to take it away before he cut himself on the sharp metal. Why? Phyllis asked. I can't answer that. You can't or you won't. Listen, Phyllis, you come barging in here, break my nose, and bombard me with questions. Who do you think you are? The real reason I came, Barley, is to tell you about selective availability. What about it? He mumbled through the towel. Pfft, you think I'm going to tell you now? She grabbed her jacket off the chair back and poked her arms through the sleeves. Stanley's worried eyes followed her every move. Through his own watery eyes, Barley could see Phyllis pulling her Asics on over her bare feet. She didn't stop to do them up. You're a bastard, Barley Lick. She patted Stanley on the head and was out the door without another word. I'm going to read you part of one more chapter. Hello. This is from chapter 15, Cathedral Grove. Barley had never imagined trees could be so big. He had seen huge trees in Olympic Park in Washington and in Chilliwack in BC, but they were nowhere near as big as these. These were like something out of The Lord of the Rings. Martin navigated west toward the parking lot. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, he said, drawing strange looks from both Barley and Newton. I can't bring it down here, too many people. People were indeed everywhere, like little ants getting bigger and bigger as they descended. God, look at them all, said Newton. Barley could hardly believe what he was looking at in the middle of a majestic old-growth forest. It looked like an army base with skids of food and supplies, and what appeared to be a solar-powered battery pack. He felt a knot forming in his stomach, not from motion sickness. This was something different altogether. Martin brought the chopper around to the roadway, which was eerily empty of motorized vehicles because the conservationists weren't letting any cars through. I can set her down along that wide stretch there. There'll still be enough room for cars to pass if traffic resumes, he said. That doesn't seem likely any time soon, said Newton. The big machine jostled in the crosswind as he landed, last year's leaves flying up and dancing across the road. A huge toppled hemlock stood about 7 feet on its side, an orange splash spray-painted on its bark. "Lejubla, said Barley under his breath. In the distance, at least 100 sign-waving tree huggers formed a human barricade across the highway. When Martin cut the engine and the rotor blades slowed, Barley could make out what the protesters were chanting. They were singing, really, some off-key, some perfectly tuned like a Sunday school choir. It was Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi. Barley knew it. Since his father died, his mother had taken out the old record player and they spent some nights listening to all his old vinyl. She said the song was about appreciating what you have while you have it. Martin sang along with the crowd until Newton gave him a look and he clammed up. I'll stay with the chopper, sir. Barley followed Newton, jumping out of the helicopter, careful to stay away from the rotors. 2 protesters wielding placards that said "Save the Trees" were busy smashing out the windshield of a Ford F-350 truck. A $50,000 machine. Barley flinched, thinking of the Corvette. He swallowed. Sure this is a good idea? Just beyond, a more peaceful group sat on colorful blankets around a small totem pole. Others danced to the rhythm of a skin drum. A cloth banner proclaiming First Nations of Vancouver Island swayed behind them, held up on poles cut from dead wood. When a banana peel came flying out of the trees above them, Barley put up his hands to protect his head. Dozens of environmentalists were camped out on platforms built into the canopy of the Douglas firs surrounding the parking lot. Some trees had orange slash marks spray-painted on their trunks like the fallen western hemlock next to the helicopter. Whoa! Newton pulled up the collar of his coat. Stay close to me, Barley. We'll be all right. Why are they protesting? Barley suddenly felt scared. What was he doing in the middle of a violent protest with this man who threatened to wreck his family? They call themselves Friends of Cathedral Grove. They're angry because trees are being cut down to make room for a new parking lot. I wonder how long they've been up there. Barley motioned toward the tree dwellers. Who knows? Newton put his hand up to shade his eyes and scan the trees. Don't worry about them, he said. We'll just do what we came to do and get out of here. Barley discreetly pointed the screen of the Garmin heavenward to take a reading. Maybe you should wait until we're in the trees and out of sight, said Newton. I can't get a reading if there's tree cover, Barley said. A GPS needs a clear view of the sky to work. Once we're under the branches, we'll have trouble getting a signal. I thought you were using your GPS in a tunnel. Barley shook his head. Why didn't people get it? I used the GPS to get to the tunnel. Then I had to rely on clues to find the cache. Do you have any clues? He asked again. Newton didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked a question of his own. Is it far to the coordinates? 580 meters southeast. Barley indicated with one finger towards a path through a thick stand of Sitka spruce. That's only half a kilometer, said Newton. Yes, but that's as the crow flies. The GPS doesn't follow trails. If there's a 200-foot-long rock wall in the way, we have to go around, and that distance isn't counted by the GPS. A woman in her 30s with green hair held a painted placard blocking their way. The sign said, "Say no to clear cutting," and had pictures of trees lying dead on the ground. They had arms and legs and faces like people in pain. "You are not one of us," she said. "What brings you here?" Barley's throat was too dry to speak. What are we doing all the way out here? He had no idea. Newton said, "We support your cause." She let them pass. The woods smelled of rot and cotton candy all at once. Barley was relieved when the needle on the RCMP garment pointed away from the woman with the sign. "We're going the right way," he whispered, as they reached a sign that said, "Oldest Tree Trail." "We're down to 387 meters. "That's good," said Newton, who did not sound good at all. In fact, he sounded more nervous than Barley felt. They continued walking until they came to a tree stump as wide as 2 parking spaces. 7 adults stood shoulder to shoulder on top. The stump appeared to have been dragged from somewhere else to block the path, although Barley couldn't imagine how they could have moved it. "I am the Lorax," announced the man with a huge walrus mustache glued over his top lip. "I speak for the trees have no tongues." Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that glimpse into geocaching. I wanted to show you one of my favorite books, The Lorax, which does play a role in the Degrees of Barley Lick because one of the themes is saving old growth forests. And I didn't mention that the book is set on the lower main. So right now, I am going to ask you some questions, and the first person cache on geocaching.com, they usually end the log post with TFTC. What do those letters stand for? TFTC. The first person to answer is going to win the leg warmers from Yarn Cove Knitting. Heather Barrett is the knitter, and they are in the traditional Newfoundland colors, the Republic of Newfoundland colors. When the book arrives, and it ships tomorrow, I'm so excited. It will be available at Running the Goat Books and Broadsides in Torres Cove on the southern shore near St. John's. It'll also be available at Chapters and Coles here in St. John's, and hopefully the Travel Bug on Water Street and Hillhead House on Prescott Street. As other locations become available, I will let you know on social media. And Barley Lick will also be available at craft fairs, including the Winter Wonderland at the Holiday Inn in St. John's and the Newfoundland Craft Council's Christmas Craft Fair and the North Pole Craft Fair, both at Jack Byrne Arena in Torbay. Do we have an answer? My assistant is going to help me out here. Oh, we have a winner, and the winner, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is Zhao Di Dina. So congratulations. The correct answer to TFTC is thanks for the cash. That's what those letters stand for. And we have Zhao Di Dina, who is the winner. So Zhao, get in touch on my my website, susanflanagan.ca, and let me know where to send the leg warmers. You'll be very cozy this fall and winter with those on. Okay, here's the second question. Colombia, and my family and I used to take care of him. And I'll give you a hint. The answer was in my social media posts. So the first person to answer this question is going to win this. It's also from Yarn Cove, knitted by Heather Barrett. And this is a wine bottle cozy, a must-have. Remember when we used to travel? Well, if you went to the south of France and you picked yourself up a bottle of wine, you put it in your suitcase and you were worried it would get broken. You probably put it in a dirty sock to cushion it. Well, now you can pack this when we start traveling again, and you can slide your bottle of Cuban rum or Chateau de Pape wine into it, safely put it in your suitcase, and carry it home. Do we have an answer yet? The name of the true inspiration for Stanley, who's named after the Stanley Cup in the book. Oh, no answer yet. I'm very excited that the book is shipping tomorrow. As you know, during COVID, everything has been delayed. People are waiting on wood and cupboards and books and everything. But hopefully, Marnie at Running the Goat, Books and Broadsides, will have boxes of books in her hands next week. And then I'll be able to send out the winners. Oh, here comes the answer. Okay, the winner to the second question. So who was Stanley inspired by? The dog's name is Buddy, and he has since gone to the place where good Great Danes go. The winner is Jessica Webb. I know where you live, so I can get this wine cozy to you. Now, the final question. It's an anagram of two male names. So the first person to figure out the correct anagram where I got the name of the main character, Barley Lick, will win a copy of the Degrees of Barley Lick, and I will send it out to you signed however you would like it signed. I should say a few thank yous while I let you search for the anagram. I'd like to thank all of you for joining into this reading. It's been so much fun. And if you'd like to order a copy of the book, you can do so on my website, susanflanagan.ca. There's a link there. Or you can go to runningthegoat.com and go directly to my publisher's website and this event. I'd also like to thank the Writers Union of Canada and the Canada Council for the Arts public reading program for their financial support for this event. And thank you to Marnie Parsons at Running the Goat and Books and Broadsides for giving me the opportunity to introduce you to Barley Lick. If I hadn't met Marnie at the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland and Labrador's inaugural Pitch the Publisher event in November 2019, Barley Lick would not be out in the world. I'd also like to thank Rachel Dragland, who's been helping me with social media at Running the Goat, and for Emma Alain, who designed this cover. We're really thrilled with it. It shows a topographic map with lines. Here's another topographic map of Golden Ears Park in British Columbia, one of the scenes in the book. And it also has a lovely old growth forest tree. And we all want to save the forests. One of them, the first one, is a pink aardvark in a 1980s cartoon. called the Raccoons. There was a hamburger place in Ottawa that had a mural painted on the wall of this character. His name was Blank Sneer, S-N-E-E-R, and he was a pink aardvark. I don't know if that will help you any. Sounds like I'm going to have to give you another hint. Technicians, any answers rolling in? Oh, I hear that Sarah is close, very close. I don't know if that's Sarah in Alberta, perhaps. You can plug into your Google the letters for Barley Lick, and it will show you anagrams. This person, whose name I used, is a friend in Straitsview on the northern peninsula of Newfoundland. And I originally, I don't know why, made an anagram of his name and cast him as a fisherman in a novel I wrote that has yet to be published. But his name migrated over to this novel and became not only the main character's name, but part of the title. So if that person is tuning in, I'm sure he would figure out the anagram. How close are we, technicians? Oh, I see movement. I see movement. Someone got it. Drum roll, please. The winner is Sarah Furlong for figuring out that Barley Lick is an anagram of Cyril Blake. Cyril Blake from Straitsview on the northern peninsula of Newfoundland. So yay, congratulations, Sarah. Get in touch. Tell me how you'd like the book signed, and I will have it sent out to you. I'm thrilled. BC, and it involves geo pages, but things hopefully will turn out well in the end for Barley Lick. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm Susan Flanagan in St. John's, Newfoundland. You have a good evening. Good night.